Order, honorable members. Order. Today we have only one item on the agenda, and that will be the introduction of the appropriation bill, introduction of public sector pensions and related payments bill, introduction of ESCOM debt relief, and introduction of revenue laws bill. I'll now ask the secretary to read the first order.
Introduction, appropriation bill and tabling of division of revenue bill. Introduction, public sector pension and related payment bill. Introduction, ESCOM debt relief amendment bill. Introduction, revenue laws amendment bill.
Thank you, Honorable the Minister of Finance.
Order, Speaker. On a point of order, Speaker.
Order, honorable member. I will ask the minister to take a seat first. There are two members. Honorable Mautre, there's the first member who raised his hand is Honorable Manye. I'll recognize you after him. Thank you. Honorable Manye, what's the point of order?
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, for us as the MK Party, we are asking purely based on the values of Ubuntu that on the 19th of February we're here to listen to the budget speech, which didn't happen. We think that the minister will be within the values and the realm of Ubuntu for him to apologize to this House for making us come here for nothing, and must also apologize to the people of South Africa, which we represent here, that that day did not happen. So we're asking that that apology must happen. And also, Speaker, we also want to ask the minister to take this House into his confidence to say what exactly caused him not to table the budget speech on the 19th. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Mautre. Minister, you can take your seat. Minister, you can take your seat. I'll recognize the EFF. Yes,
Thank
honorable
you,
member.
Speaker. Speaker, I was looking at the time when you sat on that chair. It was exactly 3 minutes past 2. The House sitting is scheduled to start at 2. So, Speaker, you were late. All of us were here. The honorable thing for you to have done was to apologize for coming late and explain why you actually came late. So please, we request you to apologize for coming late and tell the country why you arrived late in this sitting that you have called yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable members. We have noted both your requests as well as your comments. I want to remind honorable members that during the sitting on the 19th, which never proceeded to be the sitting, we gave an opportunities for parties to express themselves. Members of the executive were here, the leader of government business were here, and I'm sure the minister in presenting the budget have noted the concerns that have been raised then and have noted the concerns as they have been raised now. And I will leave it to the minister to then deal with the matter. Secondly, Honorable Mautre, indeed, we start at 2. Oh, yes, sir? Okay, can you allow me to assist the minister? Well, let's not do what we usually not do in this House. We have decorum, we respect one another, and we allow the speaker to do what she has to do. Indeed, we're supposed to start at 3. We started, okay. On Wednesdays, we usually start at 3, but today, because of the presentation of the budget, we started 2. We do apologize because there were a bit of, people here on the aisle, which the Sergeant at Arms was trying to remove. I was here before 2 p.m. But we do apologize that we did not start exactly on the time as you requested. And all of us know that time, we had a not so kind dress rehearsal for a budget which will now be presented, but we are now asking the Minister of Finance.
Honorable Speaker, I'll probably assure Khila that I'm going to come back to that issue later. It's taken. Honorable Speaker, Togo Didiza, Deputy Speaker, Anneli Lotrit, Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Refulum Ntsweni Tsipane, Deputy Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Les Governor, His Excellency, the President of the Republic of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, Honorable Deputy President Paul Mashatile, Cabinet colleagues, members of the Executive Council for Finance, honorable members, Governor of the South African Reserve Bank, Commissioner of the South African Revenue Service, fellow South Africans. Just before, okay, I'm going to come back to that point, Khila. I have the honor to table the following documents before this House. The 2025 Division of Revenue Bill, the 2025 Appropriation Bill, the 2025 ESCOM Debt Relief Amendment Bill, the 2025 Public Sector Pension and Related Payments Bill, the 2025 Revenue Laws Amendment Bill, the 2025 Estimate of National Expenditure, the 2025 Budget Review, and this 2025 Budget Speech. Just on a lighter note, Madam Speaker, let me first, before going on that lighter note, take the point raised by Honorable Manyi. And indeed, it was an inconvenience for this Parliament and the people of South Africa. And indeed, we owe this Parliament an apology. And we owe the people of South Africa an apology. No doubt about that. We didn't like the postponement. But on a lighter note, I saw on social media something that said this budget is postponed until my favorite club wins. That is Kaizer Chiefs. In cabinet, when I made this point, Dr. Ramkhopa wrote me a piece of note and said, "Yo, this budget will never be tabled." And Honorable Gigawa said, "Hey, these people are putting the country in crisis because this budget will never be tabled." Now, let me go back to the postponement, as I've apologized. Go back to the postponement and say the postponement of the tabling of the budget 3 weeks ago was a regrettable, but perhaps an understandable feature of multi-party governance. It is also a sign of some of the difficulties associated with a multi-party democracy. But what is positive is that the delay has stimulated an unprecedented level of public debate about the difficult policy trade-offs we as a nation face. A vital debate about which policies to fund and how to fund them, about which priorities to pursue now and which ones we may need to delay in the context of unlimited resources. As much as the debate has been dominated by the proposed increase to value-added tax, the bigger debate must be about how we grow the economy for the benefit of all South Africans. A bigger, faster-growing economy and the larger fiscal resources that comes with it would give us more fiscal room to meet more of our developmental goals. But the truth is that our economy has stagnated for over a decade. In that time, GDP growth has averaged less than 2%, far below the level required to meet our expanding list of needs. In 2024, the economy grew by only 0.6%. Over the medium term, GDP growth is projected to average 1.8%. To meet our goals of redistribution, redress, and structural transformation, the economy needs to grow much faster and in an inclusive manner. This is the central objective of the current administration. Today's budget proposes a bold and pragmatic approach to achieve this formidable task. It calls for macroeconomic stability supported by sound fiscal policy, for the deepening of structural reforms to remove the obstacles to growth and job creation, and for scaling up infrastructure to unlock the productive capacity of the economy while building a capable state that supports all these efforts. The budget remains committed to a balanced fiscal strategy. As projected in the 2024 medium-term budget policy statement, a budget primary surplus of 0.5% of GDP will be achieved in the 2025, and this will grow to 0.9% in 25-26. Government debt will stabilize at 76.2% of GDP in 25-26, while the consolidated budget deficit also narrows to 3.5% by 27-28. Madam Speaker, as debt stabilizes, a growing surplus will enable the government to reduce debt service cost as a proportion of revenue. Some of these savings will be used to build up fiscal buffers that we need as protection against future economic shocks. Shocks like the COVID-19 pandemic and other uncertainties stemming from the rising geopolitical tensions and the global economic ramifications thereof. Debt service costs will amount to 389.6 billion in the current financial year. This translates to 22 cents of every rand we raise in revenue. It is more than what we spend on health, the police, or basic education. We must reverse this trend and prevent the cost of debt from taking away resources that could otherwise be spent on our pressing social needs or to invest in growth. In this regard, our fiscal strategy stabilizes debt service cost as a percentage of revenue in 24-25 by maintaining a primary budget surplus. The ESCOM debt relief arrangements are also effective and contribute to improved fiscal position. ESCOM is now in a much better fiscal position than in 2023 when the debt relief was originally announced. As a result of these improvements, we have decided to simplify the final phase of the debt relief package. The last 70 billion debt takeover will now be replaced with a 40 billion in 2025-26, 10 billion in 28-29. This will result in a saving for the government of about 20 billion rand. Honorable members, these fiscal improvements are important milestones on our path to fostering a stable macroeconomic environment. That is a prerequisite for a higher level of growth and that promotes job creation, improve public services, and reduce inequalities. Our strategy to achieve faster growth remains anchored in the following 4 pillars: maintaining macroeconomic stability, implementing structural reforms, improving state capacity, and accelerating infrastructure investment. Maintaining macroeconomic stability inclusive of prudent fiscal policy, promotes stable prices, lowers interest rates, and enhances the country's resilience to external shocks. This creates a conducive environment for investment. Implementing structural reforms removes impediments to growth and creates a solid foundation for a higher and sustained economic growth. Madam Speaker, it was out of this realization that economic growth and fiscal stability are mutually reinforcing that Operation Vulindlela was formed as a joint venture between Treasury and the Presidency to fast-track the implementation of the structural reforms. Its objective were to stabilize the supply of electricity, create a competitive and efficient freight logistics system, reduce the cost and improve the quality of digital communication, ensure a stable quality supply of water, reform the visa regime to facilitate skilled immigration and support tourism. Since its establishment in 2020, Operation Vulindlela has made real progress in achieving these objectives. For example, the energy reforms have created 22,500 megawatts pipelines of projects. More than 10,000 megawatts are formally registered with NASA, which is of the last step in the regulatory process. These projects will contribute to reducing power cuts. The freight logistic roadmap was approved. The roadmap allows private sector participation and gives third-party access to any operator without discrimination in accordance with the network statement. The cost of 1.5 gigabyte data bundle has declined by 51%, allowing individuals and small businesses to access more affordable data. The water use license backlog has been cleared, unlocking billions in investment and freeing projects that had stalled because of the backlog. The water quality regulatory system was reinstated for the first time since 2014. This is the green drop, blue drop, and no drop certification that enables effective intervention in supporting failing municipalities to provide clean water to citizens. E-visas for travelers from 34 countries have been introduced to significantly boost tourism. The Trusted Employer Scheme has been established to fast-track visa process for major investors. These achievements have eased economic bottlenecks and built on the successes. So phase 2 of OV will focus on the following: through existing reforms in energy, water, logistic, and visa system. Strengthen local government in improving the delivery of basic services. Harnessing digital public infrastructure as a driver of growth and inclusion. And creating sufficient productive and inclusive cities. Madam Speaker, infrastructure is a key pillar of our growth strategy. It is the bedrock for economic development, a key source of jobs, and an avenue for scaling up service delivery. This budget reflects that understanding. Allocation towards capital payments are the fastest growing area of spending by economic classification. Public infrastructure spending over the next 3 years will amount to more than 1 trillion rand. The spending will focus on 3 sectors: 402 billion rand for transport and logistics, 219 billion for energy infrastructure, 156 billion rand for water and sanitation. In transport, the South African National Roads Agency will spend 100 billion rand over the medium term to keep the national road network in good condition. Provincial roads departments will reseal over 16,000 lane kilometers of roads in their areas of authority. Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa is making steady progress to rebuild the infrastructure to provide affordable commuter rail services. To sustain this progress, we have provisionally allocated an additional 19.2 billion over the medium term for critical signaling. This will enable commuters from areas such as Mamelodi, Wamashu, Motherwell, Khayelitsha, Naledi, to name but a few, to catch a train every 10 minutes. To get to and from work and significantly reduce the money that lower-income households spend on transport. Let me pause and show an example. Let me pause. The World Bank has produced a report. People tend to be selective when they write report. They don't read what they don't like. What that report says is that rand for rand, if you had to compare a worker from South Korea and a worker from South Africa, rand for rand, the South African worker gets lesser disposable income than the South Korea. The explanation is cost of transport. In South Africa, that cost of transport is affected by two things: the spatial dimension, and secondly, the cost of transport. And this investment critical deals with that challenge for poor communities in our areas. I don't know, when somebody said it's not, this budget is not pro-poor, what do you mean? This allocation will also allow PRASA to maximum the potential of the 241 new trains delivered through the rolling stock renewal program. Despite the progress made, PRASA procurement system needs strengthening. The management of the unit of the entity has already instituted measures to strengthen their procurement weaknesses. This includes getting support from the National Treasury to build capacity and mitigate risks, and undertaking live audits for larger procurement projects. In the water sector, we're investing in several large-scale dam projects that are ramping up or entering construction. The Mkomazi project is expected to commence construction in November 2027, transferring water into the Mngeni water supply system. This will increase the total capacity of the system to 5 million households in eThekwini and 4 district municipalities in KwaZulu-Natal. The Back Bill augmentation scheme is expected to start in July 2026. The project will improve the Western Cape's water supply system, improving regional water security while reliably supplying domestic, agricultural, and industrial water users. To further accelerate infrastructure delivery and effectiveness, we are continuing reforms to facilitate greater private sector participation, capital budget reform, and alternative infrastructure financing. The new regulations for public-private partnerships have been finalized and will take effect on the 1st of June 2025. The regulation reduces procedural complexity of undertaking PPPs, create capacity to support and manage PPPs, create clear rules for managing unsolicited bids, and strengthen fiscal risk governance. The regulation also makes provision for national department to establish sector-specific PPP units. These units will drive private sector participation, creating opportunities to optimize the balance sheets of financial distressed state-owned companies. The Department of Transport and Transnet will engage the market on PSP projects in the following areas: the iron ore, chrome, coal, and manganese lines, expansion and automation of the ferrochrome and magnetite terminal at the port of Richards Bay. The container and automotive sectors, including the potential designation of the South African container port system as a regional transshipment hub for major shipping lines, and establishment of independent rolling stock leasing company Should Transnet require gap funding for its PSP project, the budget facility for infrastructure will consider these after proper packaging and financial structuring. Additional guarantees may also be considered to finance the entity's maturing debt as well as its capital investment program. In the energy sector, the independent transmission program will be launched later this year. A request for information for a multi-line transmission packaging will also be issued by the Independent Power Producer Office in July this year, followed by a request for proposal in November. This will enable the private sector to play a key role in the expansion of the transmission network. Madam Speaker, we have reconfigured the BFI, the budget for infrastructure facility, to run multiple bid windows instead of just one annual window. Earlier this week, we published a call for proposal under the new system. The first window is now open and will close mid-April. The next window will open soon thereafter. Financing decisions to determine the appropriate fiscal mechanism to support projects have also been separated from the evaluation and budget processes. This will facilitate the mobilization of significant private finance and improve allocative efficiency in fiscal support. This includes financing for proposals approved during the special window last year. Lastly, our efforts to diversify the financing structure to support infrastructure are taking shape. A credit guarantee vehicle to mobilize private sector capital by de-risking projects will be launched in 2026. Its initial focus will be on independent transmission, aimed at bridging the energy transmission deficit. Once the vehicle has demonstrated its efficacy, it will be broadened to include other sectors. Government will issue its first infrastructure bond in 25-26. We will also introduce other innovative financing instruments to diversify the infrastructure fund sources. Financial institutions, including pension funds, banks, development banks, and international financial institutions, have already expressed interest in participating. This, Madam Speaker, is how we plan to leverage infrastructure investment to ease supply-side constraints to the economy and improve access to social services the people get. Madam Speaker, there are several persistent spending pressures in health, education, transport, and security. These have to do with the government properly fulfilling its service delivery mandate. After careful consideration, the government has decided to fund these. Deferring the funding of these sectors further would compromise the government's ability to meet its constitutional obligation to those people. To raise the revenue needed, the government proposes to increase the VAT rate by 0.5 percentage point in 25-26 and by another 0.5 percentage point in the following year. This will bring the VAT rate to 16% by 26-27. Let me pause for a moment. Let me pause for a moment and say,
Order, honorable members. Let's allow the minister to finish his presentation.
Madam Speaker, should the spending reviews and other measures we're embarking on yield enough extra revenue, we will reassess the need to embark on the second 0.5 percentage point increase to VAT. Government also proposes no inflationary adjustment to personal income tax brackets and medical tax credits. These measures will raise 28 billion in additional revenue in 25-26 and 14.5 billion in 26-27. Madam Speaker, this decision was not taken lightly. I can tell you now, no Minister of Finance is ever happy to increase taxes. We are aware of the fact that a lower overall burden of tax can help to increase investment and job creation and also unlock household spending power. We, however, have had to balance this knowledge against the very real and pressing service delivery needs that are vital to our developmental goals, and we cannot be further postponed. Honourable members, we thoroughly examined alternative raising the VAT rate. We weighed the policy trade-offs involved in increasing the corporate and personal income taxes. Increasing the corporate and personal income taxes would generate less revenue while potentially harming investment, job creation, and economic growth. Corporate tax collections have declined over the last few years, an indication of falling profits and a trading environment worsened by the logistic constraint and rising electricity cost. Furthermore, South Africa's corporate income tax collections are already higher than most of our peer countries. On the other hand, an increase to the personal income tax rate would reduce taxpayers' incentive to work and save. Our top personal income tax rate and our personal income tax collection as a percentage of GDP are far higher than those of the most developing countries. Increasing it is therefore not feasible. Taking on additional debt to meet the spending pressures was also not feasible. The amount is simply too large. The cost of borrowing would be unaffordable. Our sub-investment credit rating would also make this level of borrowing costlier and put us at a risk of even further downgrowth. Madam Speaker, VAT is a tax that affects everyone. By opting for a marginal increase to VAT, its distributional effect and impact were costly considered. The increase is also the most effective way to avoid further spending cuts and to enable us to extend the social wage. The government is very aware of the cost of living pressures faced by households, including higher food and fuel prices and rising electricity and transport costs. This is why we are taking concrete steps to protect vulnerable households. This is done through providing social grant increases that are above the inflation, expanding the basket of zero-rated items to include vegetables, dairy liquid, blends, meats and poultry products. We are also not increasing the fuel levy for another year, saving consumers around 4 billion. Madam Speaker, broadening the tax base and improving the administrative efficiency of the South African Revenue Service allow us over time to spread the tax burden more evenly and equitably. With this in mind, SARS is allocated 3.5 billion in the current financial year and an additional 4.4 billion over the medium term. That takes the total SARS allocation to 7.5 billion over the medium term. By the end of February this year, SARS reported a significant increase in undisputed debt. This means billions of rand are owed to the state. The revenue collector has also detected 156,000 taxpayers who are not registered and who have not filed despite their substantial economic activity. We therefore call on all South Africans to comply with the law and support SARS in its endeavor to collect the revenue that enables government to fund and provide critical services. I also want to emphasize the importance of tax compliance. I thank all compliant taxpayers who pay their fair share of taxes. I also encourage those that are not compliant to do the right thing. The rewards of higher tax compliance and efficiency take time. Once again, the investment we make today in SARS will allow us to collect collect at the time to make improvements. Madam Speaker, the revenue proposed through the tax measures announced in this budget will contribute largely to us providing 232.6 billion in additional funding to key programs over the medium term. This amounts to 102 billion in 25-26, 68 billion in 26-27, 62 billion in 27-28. The funding is for spending pressures for infrastructure investment, social protection, a higher than anticipated public service wage bill, a provisional allocation for critical frontline services. Honourable members, in the last year alone, public sector health system lost close to 9,000 health workers. We did not have enough money to retain or replace them, even after reprioritizing funds budgeted for consumables and medicine. Accruals in this sector, which is the money owed by department to vendors for service already provided, also ballooned to 22 million. Let me just dramatize this thing. How it works is that in a Department of Health in a province, they you provide services. The Department of Health does not have money to pay you now. They are going to wait for April. In April, they pay you with the new money for the previous year. The second year, in 25-26, they don't have money to pay for the new ones. So it can't be allowed to go on like that. It can't be allowed to go like that. Will be any responsible government if we allow such things to happen. And as a result, therefore, our health services are becoming dysfunctional. This means that the money allocated to departments ends up paying for previous year services and goods rather than for the current needs, setting off a vicious cycle of budget shortfalls, unpaid invoices, and a crisis in cash flow and the planning and the predictability of budgets. This is an untenable situation that we could not leave unresolved. As a result, consolidated spending, which exclude interest payment, increases from 2.4 trillion in 24-25 to 2.83 trillion in 27-28. Provinces will receive 2.4 trillion over the medium-term period. This budget includes allocation to support critical provincial functions related to health and education. We trust that the allocation will be used for their intended purposes. I must repeat, because these funds that are allocated to provinces go through what is called an equitable share. Once they become part of the equitable share, the decision to divide that money and allocate becomes a provincial one. And the provincial government is at liberty to use it in any manner it decides. And the final product is the loss of capacity in health services. The local government equitable share will increase from 99.5 billion in 24-25 to 115.7 billion in 27-28. This is to fund increases in the cost of bulk water and electricity costs provided for free to needy households. In 25-26, 83% of the local government equipment share provides free basic services package for R610 per month to 11.2 million poor households. Honourable members, this package of free municipality services continues to be a key tool for reducing poverty and inequality, raising living standards and facilitating access to a greater economic opportunity. Madam Speaker, a 3-year wage agreement has been reached although the agreement exceeds the 2024 budget, in the medium-term budget policy statement projections, its duration reduces uncertainty in the budget planning. This agreement will cost an additional 7.3 billion in 25-26, 7.8 in 26-27, and 8.2 billion in 27-28. These are the companies that are outside marching for me. An amount of 11 billion rand provisionally allocated for the next 2 fiscal years for the early retirement initiative, whose intention is to attract younger employees into the public service. Preliminary savings are expected to average 7.1 billion per year over the medium term, long term. The savings will be retained by the departments. The interventions on the wage bill are aimed at ensuring that when key frontline staff are lost through natural attrition and retirement, sectors are able to fill vacant posts to keep service running effectively. Paying salaries constitute 76% of the provincial education department. This means that only 24 rand out of every 100 rand of their budget is left for funding school infrastructure, meals for learners from poor backgrounds, and stationery and textbook, among other things. Our learner-teacher ratios remain higher than we would like, meaning that we still need more teachers in classroom. To prevent compensation of employees from crowding out other equally important areas of spending, 19.1 billion is added over the medium term to keep approximately 11,000 teachers in the classroom. The foundation to building in the next generation of citizens who contribute economically and socially to this great nation is early childhood development. Despite this, the subsidy for early childhood development has not increased from 2019 level of 17 rand per day per child. To remedy this, an amount of 10 billion over the medium term is allocated to increase subsidy to 24 rand per day per child. The extra funding will also support increased access to ECD for approximately 700,000 more children up to the age of 4 years old. Health spending will grow from 277 billion in 24-25 to 329 billion in 27-28 to support equitable provision of public health services, including free primary health care services. Like in provincial education, a significant portion of provincial health budget is spent on salaries and wages. 28.9 billion is added to the health budget, mainly to keep about 9,300 healthcare workers in our hospitals and clinics. It's also be used to employ the 800 post-community service doctors and to ensure that our pharmacists do not run out of medicine. Honorable members, social grants are allocated 284.7 billion rand in 25-26. This allows us to increase the old age grant, disability grant by 130 rand. Now let me tell you a story. I was working here in Waterfront. An old man comes to me and he says, thanks for the 150, but the 150 now is gone. He says, but I don't need VAT. Now, because of the reduction in the VAT, I had to reduce the 150 to 130. The child support grant by 30 rand. The foster care grant by 70 rand. The COVID-19 social relief in its current form will be extended by a year to March 2026. 35.52 billion rand is allocated for this purpose. Let me correct a myth here. A myth that suggests that I'm trying to pose as two alternatives is either VAT or SRD. Didn't say that. What I did say is that the SRD has been a temporary grant. We have been debating to find a funding source for it so that it should not continue to crowd other spending. What we are attempting to do is to stabilize exactly that, to make sure that this grant is not only sustained, but it also does not crowd out other spending. We go on in this speech and in the previous one that leaked. Same sentence. As announced by the President in the State of the National Address, the SRD will be used as a basis for the introduction of sustainable form of income support for unemployed people. The future form and nature of the SRD will be informed by the outcome of the review of the active labor market policy programs. This is expected to be completed by September 2025. Madam Speaker, nearly 28 million beneficiaries will access social grants. The truth is that it is one of the most comprehensive social safety nets among emerging economies. This reflects our commitment to addressing poverty and inequality while keeping our spending sustainable. In this budget, we have also made a provision to replenish the funding for our security functions and peacekeeping commitments. 9.4 billion is allocated to fund the Defense Force and correctional services. Over the medium term, 5 billion has been allocated to the Department of Defense to support South Africa's participation in the SADC mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo and to supplement existing peacekeeping activities. We will continue working with the Department of Defense on ways to change the composition of expenditure to modernize the Defense Force moving forward. Madam Speaker, combating financial crimes and corruption is essential to protecting the integrity of our economy and the institutions that foster stability and social well-being. Funds are allocated for enhancing the financial forensic and accounting capabilities in our law enforcement institutions, further strengthening our ability to detect and prosecute complex economic crimes. These efforts address recommendations from the Financial Action Task Force and the State Capital Commission, ensuring that we continue to fight money laundering and the financing of terrorism with urgency and precision. There are remaining issues that require work during the year, which may require funding later in the year. These include infrastructure projects in the BFI, the rolling stock fleet renewal program, accommodating population changes that impact on provincial equitable share, in particular the 3 provinces, strengthening capability in the Office of the Chief Justice, Statistics South Africa and the South African Revenue Service were already attending to it. An issue which has been raised is also the issue of political funding and infrastructure provision for real houses. Madam Speaker, our ability to deliver public service depends on having a competent, capable, and ethical state. Delivering a reliable and sustainable core services is a priority for this government. Our focus must remain on more effective and efficient service delivery and proper combination between personnel expenditure, operating costs, and the maintenance of physical facilities and assets, supported by professional and efficient administration. For over a decade, budgets have been trimmed across the board. While these measures have helped maintain fiscal discipline, they have often been implemented without a thorough interrogation of whether the funds we allocate truly support our national priorities. We must acknowledge that over time, budgets tend to grow incrementally, often carrying forward historical allocations without necessarily reflecting the evolving needs of our country. This approach has led to inefficiencies, misalignment, duplication, and in some cases, the continued funding of programs that do not yield the intended impact. We recognize the urgent need to address this. We are not deaf to the public concerns about wasteful and inefficient expenditure. We know that we must earn the taxpayers' trust every day by spending public money with care and ensuring that every rand collected is spent on its intended purpose. Since 2013, as part of the ongoing evaluation of the operation of government, national treasuries and provincial treasuries have undertaken 240 spending reviews. These reviews range from a number of things such as officer accommodation, fleet management, and so on. However, we have agreed, out of a long discussion with colleagues in government, including the president, that we need to focus on this area of spending reviews. And as such, change the institutional arrangements that we have and locate the spending reviews in the president's office. In that sense, incorporate some of that work to the Operation Vulindlela moving forward. So we are going to give that institutional capability moving forward. The consolidated recommendations of these reviews and other things, including this, as I've indicated, the President has also undertaken to do this, to take this work together with National Treasury. Thank you for this commitment, Mr. President. As the National Treasury, we are ready to take the lead to improve effectiveness and efficiency of spending. We will, together with the President, undertake an audit of ghost workers, starting within in national and provincial departments. Use the ongoing detailed review of labor market activity provision and public employment program to consolidate and rationalize to reduce duplications and improve operational efficiency across more than 100 active labor market programs in over 20 public institutions. The recommendation of this review will also be presented to Cabinet in due course. The entire public employment ecosystem. The aim of this review is Treasury will implement a significant changes to the budget process by reassessing the initial assumptions informing budget allocations with a view to creating room for improving spending. Madam Speaker, these reviews go beyond mere cost-cutting measures. They are allowed to systematically assess whether public expenditure is effectively aligned with the priorities of the government and whether it delivers the best possible value for money and impact for the people of South Africa while keeping us on the path of fiscal sustainability. These initiatives will give impetus to the slow implementation of the recommendation of the spending review. I call on ministers, MECs, DGs, HODs, and every official responsible for public funds to embrace these efforts and play their part. The proliferation of conditional grant has necessitated a review of the conditional grant system to reduce duplication and improve effectiveness of the programs. This project will implement the first phase of the recommendations of the review and include merging conditional grants in the basic education and agricultural sector. Preference-based conditional grants to metropolitan municipalities are also introduced, linked to institutional governance and financial reforms to improve services. Madam Speaker, the incentives in our current disaster management system are skewed towards relief and rehabilitation, when mitigation and readiness to minimize damage is the most cost-effective response. Our municipalities stand at the front line of disaster response, yet they are hamstrung by aging infrastructure, bureaucratic fragmentation, and limited to access to emergency funds. The priority is to reduce the administrative burden to access emergency funds. Every hour of delay costs lives and livelihoods. Continuous improvements are made to the grant system to incentivize municipalities to access a variety of funding instruments for disasters. These include their own budget, the contingency reserve, conditional grant funding, and insurance. The budget allocates 1.7 billion to respond to future disaster over the medium term, while 4 billion is provisionally allocated to address backlogs recovery efforts for provinces and municipalities. The decline in municipality services is evident across cities. Towns and rural villages highlights the systematic challenges faced by this varying group of municipalities. As outlined by the President in his State of the Nation address, Phase 2 of Operation Vulindlela, the institutional structure of local government will be reviewed through the updating of the white paper of local government. In line with the Constitution, the principle of funds follow functions. The review of local government fiscal framework will examine how to appropriately finance local government relative to their functions and their form. Reforms to the revenue-generating service of local government, namely water and sanitation and electricity and refuse removal, are underway. So, the 8 metropolitan municipalities have met the minimum requirement for participation in the Financial Performance Incentive Grant, the Urban Development Financing Grant. Further allocations in the grant are dependent on municipalities meeting specific targets related sets out in their performance improvement action plans. For 25-26, this includes critical institutional governance and management changes to creating an enabling environment for local term investment infrastructure. By ring-fencing the revenues from these services and running operating surpluses, these business units can generate I'm not saying these units can generate funds for infrastructure improvements to deliver quality services. Madam Speaker, in conclusion, allow me to reiterate that through the policy choices we have made and the carefully targeted allocations we are proposing, the public institutions should be in a better position to continue delivering much needed services. This budget reflects our collective efforts to chart a path through difficult times to prosperity. It represents a vision of future and realistic assessment of the present, as well as the options available to us right now. This vision can only be achieved by making difficult but considered policy choices, choices that weigh up trade-offs and commit to a way forward. Honourable members, this budget is the product of a combined and careful consideration of the Cabinet of the Government of National Unity. Despite some minor disagreements, I must confess, that has done the difficult and necessary work of assessing the alternatives open to us at the current conjuncture in our growth journey. Honourable members, this budget is also a proposal to you as Parliament that has been democratically elected to represent the aspirations and interests of South Africans by confronting the difficult choices needed to move our country forward. It is in this spirit that I draw to the words of the Pan-African leader Amal Kabar, who advises us, always bear in mind that the people are not fighting for ideas, but for things for ideas, for things in anyone's mind.
Order,
they are
honourable
fighting
members.
to win material benefits, to live better and in peace, and to see their lives go forward, to guarantee the future of their children. The policy choices proposed here are about achieving these material benefits. They are about moving South Africa and all South Africans forward into a better, more prosperous and equitable future. Speaker, as I close, allow me to express my deepest gratitude to the President and Deputy President for their counsel, their support, and for their leadership, in particular in this difficult budget. Thank you also to the Deputy Ministers of Finance and the excellent National Treasury team led by the Director General. Thank you to the Commissioner for the South African Revenue Services and the Governor of the South African Reserve Bank for their astute stewardship of these two key institutions. Thank you to my cabinet colleagues, the Ministers' Committee in the Budget, and the Budget Council who share the heavy load of the tough decisions that must make to maintain this sustainability of our public finances. To the Parliamentary Standing Committees of Finance, Appropriation and Public Account, I express my sincere appreciation. And of course, out of this threat, without the support of my wife and my family, it would not have been as easy as, it would have been as difficult as. It was through the support from Mom Chawe that I've been able to withstand all this challenge. Lastly, thank you to South African people who continue to entrust their aspiration to us. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Thank you. Can I allow members to take their seats? Honorable members, order. We have now heard the minister tabling the executive statement, which is a budget. It is tabled here in the House. Now the task is for you as Parliament to then reflect on this budget through the relevant committees. The papers tabled, order. Order, Honorable order. Thank you. Honorable members, order. Order. Honorable members, just ignore the people that are going out. Allow me to address you. You have now heard the budget tabled. Order. Honorable members, you will have your chance to address the media as you go out. But for now, just listen. The budget has been tabled. It is now going to be referred to relevant committees to interact with the budget, which allows you an opportunity as public representatives to engage with this executive statement. And it will then come back for debate in this very House where you will express your views. For now, the House is adjourned and we thank the Minister for the budget. I request members to stand. Order. I request members to stand and wait for the presiding officer and the maids to leave the chamber. That concludes the business of the meeting.
John